There's a lot of data in the psychological literature talking about the emotional impact of rosacea, and it's quite astonishing how people will judge others with facial redness sort of unfairly, and it really is takes quite an emotional impact on a lot of people.
It does kind of play with you a little bit because you don't know if you're gonna have a good day or a bad day with rosacea. It's just the unpredictability of it is what makes it kind of hard to manage. And so I think it does kind of, take a toll, especially for females who, we're so conditioned to, look beautiful. So I think there's a little bit of kind of the social pressures as well.
This is Inside-Out Dermatology with Dr. Julie Kenner, where we explore science, skin, and well-being. Hi, I'm Dr. Julie Kenner, board-certified dermatologist, PhD scientist, and skincare formulator. Welcome back to Inside-Out Dermatology, everyone. Today's episode is all about rosacea, and I am lucky enough to have a guest with us today who has a lot of familiarity with this condition.
A little too much, but thank you for having me.
I'm excited to talk about rosacea because I think it is one of the most common and underappreciated and underdiagnosed conditions in dermatology that we see today. And going along with our theme of Inside-Out Dermatology, where we talk about skin conditions and how they affect our overall health, as well as our longevity and emotional wellness, rosacea has great impact on the rest of our body and not just on the surface of our skin. So, Christina,
Yes.
Tell us how rosacea, when did you first start noticing your rosacea? And tell us a little bit about how it's affected you.
Well, honestly, I didn't know that I had rosacea until I actually saw you, Dr. Kenner, to be honest, because I had just always chronically had rosy cheeks and broken blood vessels and what kind of appeared to be, minor bumps, not quite acne, just wasn't sure what it was. And nothing, really worked for it except, wearing makeup, which is just a cover up, right? And so once I met you actually, and you gave me the right combination, the Rosacea Combo Gel, vitamin C, the retinoid solutions, I started to see a big change and difference in my skin, and people actually started to notice, because I'm one of those people, I really do not like to wear makeup. If I can avoid it, I will go the easy route as much as possible. But when I started getting, especially on my right side of my face, broken blood vessels, one side would be a lot redder than the other. I just became more conscious of it. And so I started to wear, cover up makeup, that type of thing. I would use IT Cosmetics, which is supposed to be covering up folks who have, reddish skin and so on and so forth. But once I started actually using the products over time, probably the first 3 months of using the products, I actually started to notice a huge change and the mitigation of the broken blood vessels, as well as just the overall redness, and was able to actually kind of get away from having to wear heavy foundation, which I'm just not a fan of, to be honest. So it just was kind of a culmination of you figuring it out, me taking, charge and actually, addressing the issue. Is kind of how it was all came together, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's sad that a lot of people actually don't have access to a dermatologist or another person that can help them identify what it is and give them the medications that are more tailored or customized to that particular need of the condition. So let's step back just a little bit and talk a bit about what rosacea is. Because I think a lot of people call it adult acne or other or aging or other names, and it really is a condition of inflammation, and it is a hyperirritability of both the blood vessels as well as the oil glands. And I don't know about when you first started noticing it, but often it's not noticed until we get into our 30s, 40s, and beyond. Because what happens is the skin that is basically creating a blanket, so to speak, over these organelles, the oil glands and the blood vessel, provides a little bit of a cushion from the triggers. And we'll talk about the triggers in just a little bit. But as we age, we start thinning our skin. And so we're showing off these hyper irritable blood vessels and oil glands much more readily. And so then that's when we start to experience it. I don't know if that was your experience.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned actually the oily skin, because that's something I never had. I didn't have acne as a child either. So it was probably around in my 30s, early 30s, I started to notice like my T-zone getting really oily, but it was kind of oil that I can't really quite describe, but you could tell it wasn't just kind of that normal. It wasn't anything. It wasn't a sweat factor or anything like that. But my skin started to produce that. Then I started to get little bumps. And then, honestly, I think maybe it was an aging thing, but kind of towards my mid-30s, I started getting the broken blood vessels on the right-hand side of my face, on my cheeks, which, I thought maybe it was genetics. I didn't really quite know, what was causing that. But that's when I really started to notice, actually, as probably my mid-30s, to be quite honest. I'm in my early 40s now, so... And I've been treating it now for probably close to 10 years, I believe. So I caught it, around 30, 35, 36, thankfully, with you. But I can definitely see because I've had perfect skin. I did not have any acne, like I mentioned earlier. And it really wasn't until my 30s that I started noticing. And that's actually when I started to have some other health things happen that were definitely inflammation driven. So when you mentioned inflammation, that I'm not surprised there's a correlation.
Right. So rosacea is a genetic predisposition. I don't know if you have other family members with rosacea.
I remember my grandmother on my mother's side. I only saw her when I was really young, but I do remember she had these broken blood vessels on her cheeks. So actually, when I started getting them, I thought, well, maybe it's genetics, to be honest. But I do recollect that memory as a child, seeing that in some of the older relatives I had.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it is a predisposition, and a lot of people think that the genes are the only thing, and really genes contribute. It gives you a risk, but the real thing is basically the environment that you find yourself in. And so there are many, many triggers of rosacea, and so you might have the genetic predisposition, but if you're never around an environment, or that your cells aren't around an environment that triggers it, you may not express it. But you've clearly expressed it, and I'm so happy you're feeling better about it. My goal when I educate patients is really to help them understand that part of the process is, because it is genetically wired, we can't cure it like we can ear infection or whatever, but we can control it. And the way that I like to control it is twofold. One, I like to calm that inflammation, not just for the skin, but that will give us an indication that the rosacea is settling. And why I want it to go beyond the skin, that calming, is the repercussions that it has on the rest of your body. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But the other thing that I do, in addition to calming the inflammation, is I like to grow the collagen. And we do both of these through different sets of ingredients. And that's what you've been on. Mm-hmm. And
it's definitely a cocktail.
It is. It is. And one of the things I like to talk to my patients about is it's sort of like a train. And so the speed of that train is what you inherit. But the medications can slow that train. And doing some procedures, and we've done some things for you as well, that can take the train to an earlier station. And basically the goal is to get you very comfortable where this is no longer a problem in your life and your day-to-day life. A lot of different, because it is the oil glands and the blood vessels that are involved in this, rosacea can take on a lot of different expressions. So you are presenting with a red and oil gland activity. Some people with the oil gland activity get very bumpy skin.
And I'm very self-conscious about that. That's probably the one thing that I'm struggling with right now currently is the bumpiness. So it's kind of as you mentioned, things evolving with my condition, that's evolved to that, unfortunately. But yeah.
But there are some more, we've done a couple of things, and we still can. It doesn't mean that a one-time treatment.
Right.
So it does tend to have some repeat treatment needs. The other thing is sometimes because oil glands are a part of our eyelids and a part of our lips, sometimes you can get styes on your eyes because blood vessels are in both the rims of our eyes as well as the whites of our eyes. You can get something called ocular rosacea, where you get even a blepharitis or a swelling of the eyelid itself, a red swelling. You can have full-on pustules that look everything like acne, traditional acne, but it's not acne, it's rosacea. And so it can take on a lot of different expressions, and it confuses a lot of not just the person who has it, but it confuses a lot of doctors too. And unfortunately, for many years, there's been a lot of just throwing antibiotics at these individuals. And in fact, low-dose doxycycline is often used, as well as high-dose doxycycline and minocycline. And when we talk a little bit about the systemic effects of rosacea, we'll talk a little bit about how that can be problematic. Mm-hmm. But I thought before we go into that, we could talk a little bit about some of the triggers. So the classic triggers for rosacea, and not everybody will have the same triggers, but the classic triggers are sunlight and UVA light in particular, heat, stress. Stress is a big one. Humidity, wind, cold, certain foods. You can have sensitivity to very spicy foods. Alcohol is a classic trigger. Sometimes high histamine foods. There are triggers that can be from topicals. Individuals with rosacea are classically extremely sensitive skinned. They really should be avoiding things with a lot of fragrances or alcohol-based cream cosmetics. There are any number. I've had patients over the years who have responded just to one trigger very dramatically. I've had others who pretty much respond to everything. So where do you stand in that?
Well, heat for sure, humidity for sure, stress, got a lot of it. No joke about that. I think definitely those are probably the primary ones for me. I don't handle heat very well. I never have been able to. I will say, going back to your comment about makeup in general, when you have rosacea, it is very hard actually to find makeup companies or, preferred brands that actually work really well with your skin. I mean, for the longest time, I could never figure out why. I would try everything, Clinique, Estee Lauder, Chanel. Nothing would actually ever look good on me. And it's because my skin was so blotchy and was just so oily and just had, all these kind of, to your point, all these varying issues going on. And so I think a lot of times it's hard for folks, that are suffering from this too. You can't really find products that work with your skin because of the challenges around it. So, there's very few brands actually I can use from that perspective. But triggers, makeup, to your point, sometimes that was a trigger for me. It would just irritate my skin. Lotions as well. Had to be very careful what beauty products to use. Specifically, just honestly, you can't just use the over-the-counter face wash anymore. Had to start using things without dye, that type of thing, perfumes, to your point. So those are primarily triggers for me. Food, not so much, to be honest, but the rest you mentioned for sure.
Right. Well, and even more concerning is the number one trigger is sunlight. And a lot of rosacea patients will come in to see me and they say, my skin is so sensitive, I cannot even find a sunscreen that I
burn
like.
very easily.
Yeah.
And I'm not a, take me to the Bahamas vacation person because I can't handle it. I mean, I'm just like, no, don't get me on a beach. Don't get me in a hot weather. Take me to a cold place.
Right.
So yes, no, it's definitely a trigger for me. And I think probably for a lot of people, it's just really, it's hard to handle in that kind of environment.
Yeah. Well, I have a particular love for managing this disease. So we actually have spent decades at my practice really trying to identify sunscreens and products and or create them. And we've created quite a few that can assist people with rosacea and make their lives more manageable. So speaking, making their lives more manageable, I wanted to talk just a little bit about the emotional effects of rosacea. And if you don't mind speaking a little bit to that, I think a lot of my patients with rosacea, you did talk about how it made you feel self-conscious, but a lot of patients really find this condition to be quite underappreciated by a lot of both physicians as well as the people around them. And there's a lot of data in the psychological literature talking about the emotional impact of rosacea. And it's quite astonishing how people will judge others with facial redness sort of unfairly. And it really is takes quite an emotional impact on a lot of people.
I mean, I think we see people do that today. You see someone with a ton of acne and you kind of like stare at them and, or someone with a, really rosy face. I mean, it's hard not to notice, right? I think for me, it was definitely being self-conscious about it, but also if I was having a really bad flare up, and again, going back to that makeup thing, if I had to go out, sometimes the makeup and just the redness that I was experiencing just did not look good. I just didn't feel pretty. I didn't feel like, sometimes I didn't really want to go out because I just didn't feel, again, it's kind of that self-conscious thing again, but it does kind of play with you a little bit because you don't know if you're going to have a good day or a bad day with rosacea. So some days my skin is like crystal clear and people comment like, oh, your skin looks really great. And I'm like, well, what did it look like yesterday? You know what I mean? But it's just, you just don't, it's just the unpredictability of it, right. Is what makes it kind of hard to manage. And so I think it does kind of, take a toll, especially for females who, we're so conditioned to, look beautiful. And like I said, I don't like to wear makeup. So, even for me, I think I learned how to, use eyeliner like 10 years ago. I just was not really, it's just not something I'm interested in, but we're kind of forced to, especially as you age, you've got the reliance on it and so on and so forth. So I think there's a little bit of kind of the social pressures as well, right, tied to it.
Well, the other thing is about the timing of when people start to notice it. Now, it actually is in part of the genetics, and I've got children who are twins and 13. But one of the twins, I noticed her rosacea when she was 2 years old. So I gave her first diagnosis. And she would get the flush blush. And that's what it is when you're young. And it actually is pretty because rosacea mimics blush. And right. So it has an aesthetic appeal in a way when you're young. But as you get older and start to have the chronic flushing like you were talking about, or the dilated blood vessels to make your face look red, it also comes at an awkward time sometimes because this is about the time women start going through perimenopause and menopause. And guess what hot flashes does to rosacea?
I'm not looking forward, yes. But I'm sure I'll learn.
It aggravates it. And there's also a lot of emotional liability during that time of life. And in midlife, sometimes other things happen. Divorces are frequent, and there's children stressors, and so rosacea can be just an added burden, and it is something that I really have focused a lot of my career on trying to find better solutions for it. And before we talk a little bit about some of the treatments, and we'll talk about what you have used in particular, I'd like to kind of mention this inflammation that goes with rosacea and how skin really is a marker for what's going on inside of us. And inflammation on the skin being the largest organ of our body, wraps around everything that we encase in our body. And that means our gut, our brain, our heart. And rosacea has had a long and very interestingly evolving relationship with the gut. And I don't know if that has been your experience at all, but the gut and skin connection with rosacea is quite well established now. And it's something that I'm now bringing more into my conversations with patients to help manage their overall.
I'm not surprised by that. I mean, I do have some GI issues off and on, more tied to food specifically, but there is a thing, like if you go out and you have a burger or you have a pizza, and I do have this feeling like my skin, like especially my face, just feels greasy and just kind of gross. And so I think there is definitely a correlation to what you're saying. I mean, from a symptomatic perspective. So I'm not surprised by that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the theory is that the inflammagens, or the inflammatory molecules that are released in the rosacea activity, it just doesn't turn off. Then filters down to these other organs, and in the gut particular, has a negative impact on our microbiome of the gut, and it causes a disruption of the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And just kind of an interesting factoid, we actually have more bacteria in our body than we do cells in our body. And so the gut bacteria are extremely important. Yeah. And when they get out of balance, it will cause this leaky gut syndrome. And this can lead to the creation of all sorts of problems. And having other things going on, for example, abnormal hormone levels or hormone levels that go out of sync with each other, which is what happens in perimenopause and menopause. This can have an impact on a whole endocrine system, our GI system, and the behavior of the microbiome. So it is a very interesting connection, and one that can be ameliorated with some fairly simple steps that you can start to take. It doesn't mean it corrects it completely, but in terms of dietary choices. And so, if somebody isn't aware of that, they can continue to persist and may not respond to the topical treatments that we're giving them from the outside. So basically, like many of the skin diseases, it really is a good practice to think about how to treat this both inside and outside.
Well, I used to work for a ginger company, so I know a lot about ginger, and truthfully, I'm now a lifer when it comes to consuming ginger, and I have found that ginger helps exceedingly well with anything relating to inflammation, nausea, anything relating to acid reflux. A lot of people don't know that ginger can help that. So I'm not surprised by that. Like, certain foods can kind of help mitigate that. I experienced that personally with my own consumption of ginger and my daily practice of it. So not surprised by that.
Yes. So ginger is one of the foods. So great.
And turmeric.
Great.
Yeah.
You figured that out. Turmeric. Yes.
Yep. Great stuff.
And taking probiotics can help as well. Sometimes you can take prebiotics as well as probiotics. Those are the prebiotics are the species of bacteria that can help feed the probiotics, and that can help normalize it. Staying away from high glycemic index foods, staying away from highly processed foods, can also be helpful. Kind of having a plate that's colorful and filled with different fresh vegetables and produce in general can be quite helpful for some people. Alcohol, everybody always says, "Oh gosh, I don't want to give up my alcohol." I think certain people with rosacea in the past that have been public figures have kind of made this correlation in the public's mind between alcohol and
rosy cheeks.
And rosacea. And so that's kind of where some of the stigma comes from it. But it is a trigger for many people, but not everybody. So that's where it's important to kind of make sure you know what are your triggers. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the skin treatments that you've had done. So like I said, I like to work both on inflammation, calming that down, and helping grow the collagen. And I mentioned earlier that I don't like to give oral antibiotics as best I can. On occasion, I will be forced to do that for a short time. But the big reason for doing that is I don't want to disrupt that microbiome in the gut, because that can contribute to it. So I try to use everything topically, and basically I like to take a whole bunch of hammers and hit it over the head, and then slim down the program as you get better. And I think you're well aware that we have created some products that we get from a specialty compounding company that combines things like ivermectin, metronidazole, azelaic acid, niacinamide, and puts these all together in a formula. We also use a lot of sodium sulfacetamide and sulfur to just calm down that inflammation, to give it a signal that says, okay, no need to, the house is not on fire. And then at the same time, we try to grow that collagen, and we do that by both giving cells energy by a topical niacinamide and a specialty form of retinoid that we created. It took me about 10 years to put this formula together, but it is a spectacular formula. We call it the SkinHappy Solution Series, and it is a precursor to the active molecules of retinoids. And it is incredibly it has just been a gift to my rosacea patients, I can say, because it is tolerable. And I have patients tell me, oh my God, I can finally tolerate a retinoid. So
yeah, I've never had one reaction from it, actually.
Good.
Yeah.
So, Christina, we also, so we put you on those programs, and then I think you've slimmed down over the years.
I have, yes.
And some of the treatments that you've done have been kind of interesting. And is it okay if I talk about some of them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the ones that I like to do is because the hyperirritable blood vessels and oil glands are activated basically by smooth muscles, we have used some low-dose topical sprayed on Botox on Christina to help calm down her oil glands, so that they will be temporarily, so that the smooth muscles will be temporarily paralyzed and they won't do their hyperactivity. And so that was kind of
and that really worked, because that was something, again, I think the oil part at this stage in my life is what's bothering me the most. I think we have the redness under control with the other topical solutions, but yes, no, that's definitely worked. I know it's something you were kind of trying out. Yeah. And that's another thing too. So like with traditional dermatology, do you feel like they just feed people more the medication route versus trying to take kind of alternative methods, to your point, with using different
I would say
products?
that there's a handful, or a very kind of two or three products that are topical that are given to rosacea patients, and then it's almost always doxycycline and minocycline that can be given. There's a low dose version of doxycycline called Oracea that is quite an interesting molecule, but it still is an oral medication, and I have a great interest in helping not contribute to global drug resistance. And what's happening is, unfortunately, dermatologists as a group are the biggest users of antibiotics because of rosacea and acne. And so not only are we disrupting the gut microbiome, and we're learning more and more how, when we do this for young people, this has long-term effects.
Right, because if somebody really needs an antibiotic, you don't want to have that built-up resistance. So that makes sense.
Right.
And also, too, there's just so many other things that go with oral medications, down the line, different side effects and stuff like that. Right. Because I'm not a fan. If I can avoid not taking prescription, I'll do that.
Right. Yeah. So, so using something like a topical low dose application of neurotoxin to temporarily paralyze the smooth muscles that are causing some of this hyperdilation and activity is very interesting, and has worked very well. And what's interesting is when you use neurotoxin for cosmetic purposes to treat your frown lines and whatnot, it typically will last 3 to 4 months. But when you use it for smooth muscles as opposed to striated muscles, it will last in the range of 7 to 12 months. So it has a nice durability too. Yeah. So anyway, So that was one of the things. I think we've done hydrofacial on you as well.
Yes.
Hydrofacial is nice, especially for the oil glands, because it has a vortex suction that helps pull out some of the debris and calms the we put in some materials in there to calm the skin as well at the same
In the
time.
beginning, you did needling. I think that was the collagen building phase.
Yeah.
So if we tried that, that was like one of the first.
Right.
Yeah.
And then there's some exciting work coming along, sort of in the regenerative medicine realm. And I use microneedling for that. And then we use exosomes topically and sometimes the peptides topically. And that also has profound anti-inflammatory effects on skin. And that is I feel where some of the work with rosacea is going to be happening. And is happening because it's actually telling the cells to do something different than their genes are, getting things to behave in a more normal or appropriate way as opposed to this out of control way.
Yeah. And your new Korean products, Exomir, I've noticed a huge. Actually, it's so funny since I've used them last couple of months. I've gotten a lot of comments like your skin looks really bright, and I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
Yeah. So we've added to our SkinHappy line. We've added a Korean line that we vetted over a period of time. And what I like is to identify companies that can make things that I can't make here in the United States. And so this company uses two things that I thought was just spectacularly brilliant. And one is they take exosomes from a plant source and they incorporate that into their products. But the other was they put in some things called spicuses, and these are microbioneedles that come from a sea sponge. And what that does is allows greater penetration into the skin so that these molecules get in. They also use a lot of botanical antioxidants and anti-inflammatories, which they just have great combinations of them. So we've had a lot of patients very happy to have this as an add-on as well.
It's been great stuff. Yeah. And you can do it at home. You don't have to go and have maybe a needling treatment.
Right.
It's kind of
right.
It's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah. So it's nice to empower people with all the tools. And in terms of lifestyle changes, so you've changed your behavior, not you live in a beautiful, cool climate here.
But I travel to not so cool climates.
And there are supplements like the probiotics that can help. And I think in the future we'll have a lot more specific treatments for the topical microbiome, our skin microbiome as well, that are going to be coming out. And this is a really burgeoning field in dermatology. So thank you, Christina,
You're
for
welcome.
coming in. And I think there's a lot of hope for the future for everybody with rosacea.
Just get started early as soon as you see the signs.
Yeah. Now, if you like this podcast, please let your friends know and pass it on, because we're excited to bring some more clarity to a lot of confusing dermatology issues.